to make it clear.
Order. I did not make the comment.
Bill is not about taking away rights. It is about giving opportunity.
Good, ladies and gentlemen, good evening and welcome to Citizen A, where we wrap the week's current affairs with the best political team on television. Warning, we're as fair and balanced as Fox News. Joining me tonight on my ever-revolving panel of bloggers and opinion shapers, here's a social commentator, broadcaster and blogger, Efeso Collins. And she is the leader of Indigenous rights movement Idle No More, commentator and blogger, Marama Davidson. Welcome to you both. Coming up tonight, issue 1. Is Dame Susan Devoy's appointment as Race Relations Commissioner a step forward or backwards for race relations in New Zealand? Issue 2. Do Nick Smith or Len Brown have any affordable housing options open for the poor? And issue 3 tonight, why must we be burning Doc to save Doc? Plus, we'll end the show on a final word. But let's kick things off tonight with issue 1. Since becoming Race Relations Commissioner, Dame Susan Devoy has faced an avalanche of criticism, with many claiming she simply doesn't appear to have the intellectual curiosity or qualifications to be our next Race Relations Commissioner. Marama, why is Dame Susan Devoy our Race Relations Commissioner?
Because the National Party want to put someone in to uphold the dominant beliefs and keep people comfortable about where race relations are currently at. So it's not about moving people towards a progressive, visionary future of us getting along better and understanding Indigenous rights, understanding the strive for tino rangatiratanga. It's not about that at all. It's not about understanding minority discrimination or structural discrimination. None of this appointment is about race relations. This appointment is a political heavy move and an insidious one to move the country backwards.
Were you surprised by the decision to appoint Dame Susan Devoy?
So many of us have been surprised, and as someone who has worked in the Commission, I can say that there hasn't quite been this sort of phenomena in probably the Commission's history in terms of an appointment. And it is a big scratchy head thing because she doesn't articulate for me any confidence in taking us forward, and let alone bridge building. It would be really cool to see someone who can, for example, on Native Affairs, we had the plight, and everyone should go and watch, we had the plight of the Guarani Kaiowā Indigenous peoples, genocide. They've had their living systems and resource taken off them. If we had a Race Relations Commissioner with any gall, she or he would be able to say what those people there are facing is part of colonial imperialism that puts our Indigenous people into a corner. But if we need to support those people, we need to understand that they are fighting for a future for humanity and the planet, for all of us. Where is the greed? Where is the power hunger in anything that those people are doing? And then bring that home to exactly what the fight is happening here in our corners around protecting our water, wanting better wastewater systems, our hapu iwi and marae fighting for those sorts of things. So we need someone who can really pull all of that together and present it to us in a package that clearly makes us understand this is not about, race relations is not about creating divisions. It's about understanding that what is good for Indigenous people and Māori people and minorities is clearly good for us all.
Do you think Susan Devoy would understand the term colonial imperialism?
No, I don't have any confidence at all in what she understands about race relations, about discrimination, about the plight of minorities at all, about imperialism, about our colonial history. This is a really, really sad appointment. What is most sad about it, someone in the Human Rights Commission, probably several people, will have to babysit her for some time. This is the mammoth babysitting project that we've ever seen. I went into the Commission in my 20s with more than an understanding than what she has got, and I was on way, way less of a salary. If we are going to employ this woman, she is supposed to be a leader. Let's chop her salary right down until she can demonstrate that she actually is a leader, has strategic vision and knowledge and a skill set to even perform her duties.
Efeso, Dame Susan Devoy has a view of race relations that says Waitangi Day is too disruptive and it's too angry and it's too bitter and it's too divisive. so we need a new day to celebrate it. What's wrong with that view?
Well, it shows that she doesn't understand colonial imperialism at all. What she's thinking is, well, let's just do away with the historical challenges that Māori have faced for a long time in this country, and let's just start all over again. You look at the Australian Day, they've got major issues, but that's because the Australians have been very good at isolating Aboriginal communities. They just put them on reservations, hope that they head up towards Perth and Darwin where they can't be seen. And that is exactly what Dame Susan Devoy's, where she's going to be hitting it from. This is a very clever appointment on the part of the government. I've got to give them that much. They want to take us back. They want middle road New Zealanders to think, oh, this is wonderful. This is the kind of person we want. Someone who's got common sense. This weird idea that we should all be in a realm of common sense that is dictated by white mainstream New Zealand. And that's the kind of move that this government's been very clever. This is a very, very good move for them because it gives off the impression that we've got someone with common sense. We have not got someone with common sense. We've got someone who does not understand race relations. We've got Sam Sefuiva in there, who's the principal analyst at the Rights Commission. He's been acting commissioner for a long time. They could have kept him in to make sure that the process was good. Instead, they just thought, well, let's get the woman who's good at hitting black balls against white walls.
Does her appointment make you feel included in New Zealand?
No, absolutely not, because she does not understand race relations. I'm from a minority group. I'm from a Pacific Island culture. We've migrated to New Zealand. There are major challenges for Pasifika people in New Zealand. And then when we get away from that homogeneous term, let's look at what's happening to Samoan communities, Tongan communities, most of whom, as I've said many times on this program, are situated in South and West Auckland. We've got lots of our young people going through impoverished situations. Our educational outcomes are poor. And now we've got someone who's coming and saying, you know, let's just do away with that. Let's just neglect those issues for a while and let's push ahead with something different.
Marama, what should a good race relations commissioner be doing? What would you say are good values?
Someone who is able to knock down some of the misguided fear that we all have about difference and about cultures who are different and live differently from us. I want to see someone who can articulate because it's inside them, not because some really hard-working, clever person at the Commission who is passionate and dedicated wrote a speech for her, but I want to see come from inside her bones and her blood, that she understands that we have difference, that she, for example, can grab onto the word mana and say that within the treaty we have principles of race relations. We have principles where the word mana means to dignify everything who you are, your background, the land that you come from, your ancestors. And that is why the treaty can be a foundation for us getting on, because as hosts, tangata whenua most definitely should pay accord and huge respect and embrace people who are different. So there we have our minorities, our New Zealanders covered, our Pacific brothers and sisters, our Pākehā brothers and sisters who are here. I don't see any confidence in her, given what she's said so far and given how she has answered interviews. And the interviews and her articulation, or lack of, has clearly said that the Human Rights Act is in breach here. Now, if Judith Collins wants us to ignore the Act, then shouldn't it go through the correct, vigorous debate in Parliament that all other Act changes go through?
Yeah. Efeso, Auckland, of course, is the largest Pacific Island city in the world, but we don't see a hell of a lot of Pacific Islanders being given the opportunity to be political leaders through their communities. What are the cultural concerns for Pacific Islanders living in New Zealand that you think that Dame Susan Devoy should focus on?
I think part of the issue for us is National are just picking up on on who they deem as the leaders amongst Pasifika communities. Now, we heard in the Native Affairs stories that Lauli Michael Jones was being considered for this. And we've known for a long time that Michael and Inga sided with National. We've got people like Besta and Alfred who really are left-leaning at heart, but it's their moral compass that pushes them to the right. So National again are just getting the people who kind of who fit in well with their ethos. The big challenges for us is how are we going to be heard? There's a constitutional review on at the moment. Pasifika communities have met over the last 3 weeks about this review process. How can we have our voice heard for this process? And interestingly, when it comes to the treaty, when it comes to our relationship with the treaty, all of us are saying, Well, why don't we let Māori determine that, rather than us come in and say, well, this is how the treaty should be in New Zealand. And I think that reflects the heart of the Pacific community. And so we're not going to be heard. And I guess the process will probably just get ramped over as well. But Pacific people are wanting true, genuine leadership. We have our church ministers, our church leaders, our matai, who offer us that leadership. But National aren't interested in those people because they're not pushing a right vote.
Marama, actually, can I just ask a question to both of you? On the White Pride marches in Christchurch last week, when you saw that and you saw Kyle Chapman in his SS pyjamas, did you fear him or did you pity him?
Oh, I always pity him. I've always pitied him. And in one way, those White Pride marches sort of bring us all out and allow us all liberally to wave this flag that says, oh, that's bad, I feel so good because he's so bad. Yeah. But the hidden structural discrimination is far more insidious than those sort of blatant marches, which we must stand up against and which we must absolutely speak out against and stop. But it also leaves us feeling a little bit comfortable about ourselves when we can say, stop that, you racist, because the undercover insidious structural discrimination is where the generational impacts have been happening to us, to Pacific people, for years, for generations.
When you saw Kyle, fear or pity?
Oh, absolute pity. This is about, and good on them, the media, they think, oh yeah, if we pose this as extreme right belief, we can, like Marama was saying, we can feel comfortable because we don't look so bad anymore. We're common sense people. We're the Susan Devoys of this nation who aren't so bad. We've come such a long way. Let's compare Māori to what's gone on to other Indigenous groups throughout the world. And we can say, well, at least we acknowledge the treaty. It's all that feeling. There's nothing but a patronising attitude towards Māori and making them feel like, well, we've given you a good deal, so let's continue the sham and try and put up these poster people as the extreme right people.
Final question to both of you on this. Is Susan Devoy's appointment, is it a backward step for race relations in New Zealand?
It's totally a backward step, and even worse, it's dangerous.
It's a backward march.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Let's move on with issue 2. Housing affordability is fast becoming a hot button topic, with Dr. Nick Smith and Len Brown sparring all week in the media over the way forward for Auckland. Dr. Smith seems to want to start the southern limits of Auckland and northern Hamilton, while Len ponderously ums and ahs about a slow building up of housing density. Labour have offered affordable housing for the kids of middle-class white families, while National have promised urban sprawl will lower house prices. Throughout this debate, no one has really said anything about working class or beneficiary aspirations for housing. So should the poor just get used to homelessness and overcrowding? Efeso, with the government selling off more state houses than they are replacing, can the market be trusted to provide for those who are on the bottom?
Absolutely not. We know of families in South Auckland, West Auckland, some in East Auckland. Look at what's happened in East Auckland. We've just, it's awful what they've done in East Auckland. And we've got families who are paying market rents to be in places where the government is saying, well, we'll give you some extra assistance through the accommodation supplement. That is not going to cut it. The Salvation Army have been saying for years that we are going to be at least 90,000 houses short over the next couple of years. That is just not good enough. And whether it's urban sprawl or whether it's going into high-rise apartments, what we need are conditions for families to be able to have their large families and be able to live well in those families. So if we're going to have high-rise apartments, let's see them have 4 or 5 bedrooms. Let's make sure that the only people who live in central Auckland can access Auckland Grammar are not just Asian and middle-class white people. Let's make it fair.
Marama, when National were ramming the Super City through under urgency, they didn't give a damn about the concerns for locals. Now the Super City is saying something they don't want to hear. All of a sudden, Dr. Smith and John Key are grassroots democracy activists who want to listen to the local concerns. What's really going on here?
And can I just again highlight that if we had a race relations commissioner worth her black balls, she'd also be able to say the people who these housing issues are most are already impacting on the most are our Pacific people, our Māori families, and our minorities and new migrant families. So again, we need to understand that these issues tie in together, not in a way that's not that, hard to understand, how Susan DeVoy says, but in a way that is deeply intricate. Now, local concerns just don't seem to be. I want to see leaders, whether it's Len Brown, whether it's Nick Smith, who understand what is going on in Manurewa. I want to see them go to the marae and listen to the single mum who is trying her hardest to get ahead and is coming up against block after block after block. She wants to be in a house that is not a state one. She wants to go private. But to do that, so many other things have to happen that are not in her control, and she really wants to be independent, not dependent. But we are just knocking people down at every step. If people could understand how much the housing problem impacts on every other part of our well-being, I think that Nick Smith and Len Brown can do a lot better than what they're doing.
Question to both of you. The first and second generation of user pays are now struggling to enter the home ownership market and increasingly finding their debt locks them out. What does home ownership in the future look like for Gen X's and Gen Ys?
Well, it looks good in Brisbane, Melbourne and Sydney because that's what our people are doing.
Right,
Hey, you
right.
look at
So
the numbers
it's-
of Pacific people who are going across the ditch and going into
And
Australia.
Māori.
Hey, and Māori.
And Māori.
Hey, and there's real families going over there. And that is because there is absolutely no hope. When you've got houses for sale in Otara, for goodness sake, almost $400,000, who's going to afford that?
Yeah.
And what the people who can afford it are the people who are using them as investment homes, do absolutely nothing to them. Hey, they're poorly constructed. Then they throw up a garage and reconvert that so that you can have more living space. And they're renting it out for $400-500 a week. That is not on. And Fletcher Challenge is sitting there, twiddling their thumbs, saying this is great for us because we're the only providers of the materials that can build these houses. So they're going to be making lots of money out of these decisions that aren't being made.
What does the future look like for Gen X's and Gen Ys?
Oh,
Is there just no way they're going to get
Bomber,
a house
I'm
in New
trying
Zealand?
to be hopeful. I'm trying to be hopeful and positive here. It's for me, it comes down to the inequalities. There are some people who have got a lot, several houses, and they're able to charge the absolute earth. I want some compassion. I want some compassion to try and even the stakes out. That's the future that I'm hoping for.
Are we going to get it?
Oh, look, we're going to keep trying. Come on.
Final question to both of you. Who's going to win here, Len Brown or Nick Smith? Is it going to be sprawl or is it going to be urbanisation?
I think it'll be urbanisation.
Yeah?
Yep.
You think that that Len can hold the line?
Yeah, I think there'll be a little bit of sprawl, but I think in the end they'll both balance out. There'll be a bit of sprawl, but I think there's going to be urbanisation because I think that's what Aucklanders want.
Can National risk annoying and really pissing Auckland off?
It seems like they are so ballsy at the moment that they are going to piss anyone off who they feel like it. I'd like to think they can't do this, but we really need to mobilise more people on the ground to understand this and to oppose them, and that's the big challenge in front of us.
Thank you, panel. Moving on with issue 3, 95 full-time jobs went last year, and the government looks set to cut a further 140 jobs in the Department of Conservation this year for an organisation that manages 30% of New Zealand. Should we be risking our limp, clean, green brand any more than we are? Marama, one of the funding options is to allow corporates to sponsor our national parks. How would you feel about going to the McDonald's National Park? Would your soul weep a little?
My soul has been weeping for quite some time over the government's push in terms of protecting our environment in general. This is just the latest in a long, slangy abuse of us maintaining control of our resources and trusting communities and people to actually step up and have the responsibility to be kaitiaki of their environment. This absolutely stinks.
By changing the rules so that they won't actually make any public announcements about mining in any area, that actually limits any local opposition from being created in the first place, doesn't it? I mean, this is almost a way of cloaking.
Well, again, we've got the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement, which is a further sort of gun in the alley of us maintaining our kaitiaki responsibilities as New Zealanders, I'm talking. The mining extraction industries are going to be thrown wide open, even more so, because overseas foreign investors are going to be able to just threaten a little bit the government and say, don't you dare oppose us, we're going to take you to court. They can just threaten. It will cost millions of dollars. We can't stand up against them. So that's how this is going to win. We need to be really, really strong in opposing any sort of policies and approaches that take our kaitiaki responsibilities away from us as New Zealanders, as hapu. But we also need to then think, if this TPPA, for example, goes through, if these get taken away from us, what can we now do to mitigate the impacts?
In a global economic crisis where we have got such difficult economic times, isn't it the government's responsibility to look at that 30% of the land and say, how much extra dollars can we get out of that to fund schools and to fund hospitals?
That is such short-term thinking and narrow thinking. We can be, and I understand the economic imperatives, but since when did the word economy not include people? And there are better ways, more sustainable ways that we can create economy without ruining ourselves for the rest of our lives.
Efeso National have been able to get away with most of the public service cutbacks to date because there's a perception that they're behind the scenes, they're people who don't really they're not frontline staff. This will very much be frontline staff. How much further can the government get away with those sort of public service cutbacks before people start getting a little angry about it?
Well, I think they're doing a very good job at the moment because, courtesy of mainstream media, it's been reported in such a way that we've got to save money, with the economy, we're in trouble, we're coming out of a recession, all that nonsense. And the frontline jobs have gone, the government's done an amazing job at being able to cut back the number of workers they have and say that, oh, no, but these aren't important roles. These are frontline staff that are going, more than 100 people going, it's frontline staff. These are the people who do the real work. There's a new kind of white managerialism that's coming through in the government, and that really just serves those people who are earning quite a bit of money or earning reasonable amounts, and the government hoping that they might vote for them. And we're creating a society where we're losing compassion in a hurry. And we're saying to people, oh, you'll get another job. There are no jobs. Bill English has been promising for every budget 170,000 jobs. We have not seen them. What they've done very well, though, is get rid of about 170,000 jobs. And then, we've got the attacks on the welfare system. So when people go up and they turn up, can we get some support? We start attacking them. We say, and by the way, we're going to be checking if your partner's coming home too. So this government has got away with a lot, and I think we are the sleeping hobbits. We're a nation at the moment that really doesn't care, and we've lost a sense of compassion. We don't care about what's going on in the hard issues for South Auckland, East Auckland, West Auckland, because those of us who are getting by are doing all right, and it doesn't bother us. And because it doesn't touch us at our hearts, the government's been able to get away with this. And if Labour or the Greens are doing great, but if Labour doesn't stand up and be an alternative government, then we're just going to get more of this in 2014.
Also, of course, cutting these jobs, it makes it more difficult for DOC to be able to keep up to date and check with things as well. And that kind of fits in nicely with the government's desire to do more mining, doesn't it? You've got less of an actual force there to be able to delay any of those tactics. Yeah,
well, you won't have people on the ground who'll be able to see what's going on. And so when the miners come in, they say, oh, look, let's open up this piece of land or let's open up another piece. They can say, well, we don't have the data anymore on that. And the last time we checked a few years back, it was kind of okay. So let's see what we can do with the mining tactics.
Our final question to both of you. Director General Al Morrison says it's just not a matter of cost. Even if the department's budget was doubled, he'd still be making cutbacks. Does anyone believe what he's saying here?
Can we have a think about, in general, how these cutbacks have been going across the national cutback sort of mindset? And can we think about absolutely no pay, for example, Nova Pay? And can we think about work and income kiosks, plahoing all your private information out there? Now, so what is happening, we think, and Housing New Zealand is another one. How many empty houses, state homes, are there around the country at the moment? Kaiti, Manurewa, Glen Innes. Now, what is happening is cutbacks have been causing great inefficiency problems in all of our departments. And then at first they think, oh, we're going to be saving that much money in salaries. Hello, what happens? You've got a big massive backlog in Housing New Zealand. They can't fill the houses, and they've cut the criteria to try and cut their waiting lists down as well. So they still aren't managing. You've got pay systems that are going wrong. You've got computer systems that are going wrong. But wait, let's hire back the same people under contract for 4 times as much money. this cutback philosophy again is just cutting us off at the knees.
Duncan Garner described Al Morrison's position on this as the greatest lie of the week.
Yeah.
He can't be serious, can he?
No, and it is the greatest lie. This is all about money. It's about saving money so that rather than pay people some wages, they go out and pay consultants costs, and that comes up to about, in the millions as well. And so that's it's misleading.
Thank you. Let's wrap the show there, ladies and gentlemen. Efeso, your final word this week.
Well, we've enjoyed the constitutional review process that we've been going through as Pasifika communities. It's been great getting people to talk about the Constitution, and we don't know quite where it sits, and everyone's saying, well, if it's sat in one document, maybe we might know. But I think what's been great for Pasifika families is that we've been invited into the conversation. And though most of us said right at the beginning we don't believe them because they consult Pasifika communities all the time, they never take on board what we say, many of us have said, let's give this a try because we want to be heard.
Marama, your final word this week.
Oh, just a first bit of back of some squeamy introductions there. I'm not a leader of anything, but I'll surely lend my voice anytime to Indigenous rights and solidarity. Secondly, Susan Devoy needs to step down, and we need to have her acknowledge that she's not fit for the role. I am about to start a campaign, a letter writing petition campaign, asking her to do that, highlighting that the minister is just playing around with us and this is terrible. I'd really like everyone to join in.
Amen. Thank you, Marama. Thank you, Efeso. Ladies and gentlemen, to my final word. So the chief spy who briefed Key on .com just happens to be Key's old schoolmate, whom Key vouched for when Ian Fletcher applied for director of the GCSB. There are enough questions about how our police forces allowed themselves to become puppets for the US and how captured our government seem to be by corporate Hollywood and America's drive for a TPPA that will seriously erode our economic sovereignty. There are even more questions about how our own security apparatus managed to become involved when they knew the spying was illegal, and how the same clowns involved in previous oversteps in police authority were involved in this one. And let's not forget all the times John Key seems to have brain faded over when he was and wasn't briefed on Kim.com. Now we need to add to that mountain of questions the childhood relationship with the chief spy whom Key appointed and whom provided Key with his deniability. Don't give me that it's a small country, we all know each other crap. This isn't knowing a mate in a contract or having a family member appointed somewhere. It's the chief bloody spy. Those two should not know each other in any way, shape or form. Are we appreciating the vast amount of power being handed into a small group of people who are mates? The Prime Minister and the GCSB Director should not be old school friends, and the fact that we're only finding out about this now shows that it smells bad. If you like tonight's show, please join our Citizen A Facebook site and connect with other like-minded new citizens, and follow me on my Citizen Bomber Twitter and Facebook page. Thanks for watching, whānau. Good night, Aotearoa.
Supporting local content so you can see more of New Zealand on